What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and today I'm bringing you a guide on how to use Skeledirge, the Fire Ghost starter Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. If you guys are excited for this video, then make sure to leave a like on the video because we're aiming for 75 likes on today's content. As well, subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon guides and competitive content. We're going for 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I know we can get there. And of course, guys, comment down below your thoughts on Skeledirge down in the comments below. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Starting off with its stats, Skeledirge has 104 base HP with 75 attack, 100 in its defense, 110 special attack, 76 special defense, and 66 in its speed, for a base stat total of 531, which is actually perfect for a bulky tank type of Pokemon like Skeledirge. This Pokemon can do a lot of different things for any situation that you're going to be in with its typing, and honestly, this thing actually has one base point higher in its stats than both of the other starter Pokemon, and that's pretty funny because people might think that this is the best starter Pokemon of the generation for that reason. But no, that is definitely not the case. In my opinion, this one here is actually the worst of all three starter Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and today you're going to find out not only why, but how to use this absolute monster. Let's move on to its typing. Its typing is Fire and Ghost. It shares that typing with quite a few other Pokemon, notably Chandelure and Ceruledge, and I believe there's a couple others as well. It has a really good range of Pokemon that it's actually resisting and Pokemon that it is weak to. In terms of the types that it is weak to, it's weak to Ground, Dark, Rock, Ghost, and Water. 5 different types, but it has quite a few different resistances and 2 immunities. Resistance to Poison, Steel, Fire, Grass, Ice, Fairy, and Bug 4 times, and it is immune to Normal and Fighting. So overall, the defensive typing isn't bad at all. The only issue with it is there are so many good ground type Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, so many good dark type Pokemon, a lot of really strong ghosts, and of course a lot of really strong water types, and that's 4 of its 5 weaknesses. So you're kind of sitting there like, what are you going to take a hit from? Well, the answer is basically everything else. That's really the main thing. This Pokemon here has 2 really solid abilities. The first one is going to be Blaze, which, I mean, it's Blaze. It's the fire type starter ability. It's not all that. What it does is once you're at a third of your HP or lower, it boosts your fire type attacks, which could be good in certain spots. But the main thing is, the main ability this Pokemon's going to be running is going to be Unaware. The way Unaware works is it basically ignores any stat changes that your opponent would have. So if your opponent has a drop because they went for Draco Meteor, then you don't care about that drop, so you're taking still the same amount of damage. But in the same way, you're actually taking neutral damage if your opponent went for like +6 in a belly drum. Yeah, you should be fine there because of that reason. So you can be a really good bulky Pokemon, a defensive check to a lot of different Pokemon because of the Unaware ability. Moving on to the move pool, this Pokemon has a couple of really solid options, honestly less than the other 2 starters, but the thing that it gets over the other ones is its signature move, Torch Song. This move is an 80 base power fire move that's special, always special, and it always boosts the special attack of the Pokemon. Really good here because now you can have an amazingly offensive Pokemon while being still a really good defensive wall, especially when you pair this Pokemon with Slack Off. Having Slack Off and Torch Song is absolutely fantastic because you can keep going for Torch Song, keep bulking up your special attack while make sure your investment is very, very defensive while having Slack Off for recovery. I know Slack Off got nerfed, so it only has 8 PP overall now, but it is still a really solid strategy nonetheless. It also gets access to Snarl, which can be really good in certain situations to reduce the special attack Pokemon, especially in doubles. It gets access to Will-O-Wisp, which is one of the most common things you're going to see on this Pokemon, as well as Hex. I think Hex with the Torch Song and the Will-O-Wisp are going to be the 3 most common type of attacks you're going to see on this Pokemon, plus, of course, Slack Off, but that's basically one set in general, which I'm going to cover a bit later. We also see Curse here. Curse can be good in certain spots. Its speed isn't all that, so getting the defense boost, really, and the attack boost could be nice in certain situations. I do think it's going to be very rare to see it though, but it is definitely an option. Slack Off, I mentioned earlier, definitely one of the best options to see on a Pokemon like Skeledirge, as bulky as it is. It gets Encore, which could be good depending on how fast the metagame becomes. If a lot of people decide to run a bit of a slower team, then Encore on a Pokemon like Skeledirge could be really nice. It will likely be better in doubles. Just like Heat Wave. Heat Wave will be better in doubles than Torch Song would because you have access to a way to hit both targets on your opponent's side of the field, which is very powerful, and a chance to burn them both as well. On top of that, there's Helping Hand, which again, the fact that this thing gets Helping Hand is a little surprising to me, but hey, it does, and for that reason, it can be having some success in doubles. It gets Shadow Ball as a way to hit things if you don't want to rely on Hex, which could be good, and it also gets Earth Power for coverage. Now, I'm not really sure what Earth Power is going to hit because you have Fire for Steel types, and you're not really going to stay in on Rock types, but hey, it's fine. Earth Power is a good move to have. I think I'd rather go for Torch Song on almost everything other than Earth Power if I could, to be honest, though. Moving on to teammates, this Pokemon has quite a few good options for teammates. I think one of the coolest ones we're going to see is going to be actually Orthworm. Orthworm is a new Pokemon. It is pure Steel type. This Pokemon, the reason why I'm pairing a Steel type with a Pokemon and the pure Steel type is weak to ground to a Pokemon like Skeledirge that's also weak to ground is because Orthworm gets an ability called Earth Eater, which is basically just Volt Absorb but for ground types. So you're basically healing yourself up every single time a ground type attack comes your way, which is awesome unless you're dealing with a mold breaker Pokemon. Either way, having access to a Pokemon that is immune to a ground type attacks while having all the benefits of steel type is really favorable for a Pokemon like Skeledirge, because they don't share a lot of weaknesses other than that. The fact that this Pokemon Orthworm is weak to fire, to ground, and to fighting, and the fact that ground is now no longer a weakness, you have Skeledirge that is able to resist or be immune to both those other typings. Really valuable there. Other than that, I think that Wo-Chien, the dark grass not force of nature, the catastrophe, the part of the dark quartet, this one is dark and grass, Wo-Chien, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, because honestly they got some really interesting names here. But this Pokemon, dark and grass type, like I said, 85 base HP, 100 defense, and 135 special defense. It chooses any type that Skeledirge is weak to, except for rock types, which again, rock types are less common than the other 4 types, and it still pressures those rock types as well with its grass stab options. They really cover each other's weaknesses really well, and because Skeledirge has such high HP stat and such high defense stat compared to Wo-Chien, which has a really average HP stat and a really high special defense stat, they form a really good defensive core together, and I think it's going to be a very popular option to see in the UU tier, more likely than not. Moving on though, I think Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant is the paradox form of Gallade. It is a fairy and fighting type, which is insane, one of the best typings you could possibly have access to. It basically breaks through anything, which is going to make it really easy for a Torch Song, one Torch Song, to actually blow past any Pokemon that your opponent might have. So if they go for an attack, they try and switch into a defensive check, and they take a ton of damage from the close combat from Iron Valiant, you can then go into your Skeledirge, and actually fire for Torch Song. Getting your boost is going to be very powerful. Moving on, Cyclizar is a very solid pivot overall. Having the ability to switch out into the Skeledirge with the Shed Tail ability is going to be very nice, because then it can take multiple hits a lot more often and get a chance to get an extra Torch Song up before really doing a lot more damage. So there's a lot of good things going for a Pokemon like Skeledirge when you pair it with the Cyclizar. On top of that, there's Corviknight. Corviknight has the same deal with the Orthworm, the fact that it is immune to ground type attacks. Yes, it is now weak to electric, isn't the end of the world, and yes, the fact that it is now neutral to ice is fine because the Skeledirge resists ice. Overall, I think any ground type or any steel type rather that is not weak to ground makes a solid partner to a Pokemon like Skeledirge. Then there's Lando T. Lando T is going to pair well with basically everything, but again, it is a Pokemon immune to ground, which is nice. It resists the rock type attacks. The biggest weakness that Lando has is the ice type attacks, which Skeledirge is resisting. And yes, they pair well, but they have a shared weakness to water. But that's not the end of the world, because you can definitely build around that. A core of this, Wo-Chien and Skeledirge, can be very powerful in the competitive metagame. Then there's Clodsire. Clodsire is really good with Wo-Chien and the Corviknight combination, because with Wo-Chien or Corviknight, one or the other, because they're able to be immunities basically, or good resists to ground, and protect the trio of those Pokemon. So a Clodsire with the Skeledirge and then one of Wo-Chien or the Corviknight can be an amazing combination of Pokemon, because Clodsire is now immune to the toxic spikes, and it gets rid of them as well. So all very good options here. And then finally Gastron, because it gets access to spikes, it is weak to grass and grass alone, and then the Skeledirge can come in, take the attacks. Gastron can Storm Drain up the water type attacks. I think it's going to be a very good defensive combination. Absolutely potent, and one of the best combinations you could see. Honestly, any of these Pokemon, you can't really go wrong. They're all really solid. Moving on to its items, I only really have 4 of them here. I don't feel like there's very much else is going to be very solid on this Pokemon. Obviously, boots are going to be fantastic because you have a way to consistently come in on hazards. You're not going to take 25% from rocks every time. And with a nerf to slack off PP, it's going to be very solid to have that HP back. Leftovers, good on every bulky Pokemon. Going to be even better on a Pokemon with as high as an HP stat as Skeledirge. Citrus Berry is going to be really good, especially in a doubles format, because you can get a quick recovery back most of the time. And then Choice Specs. Yeah, Choice Specs. This Pokemon is 110 special attack. Don't forget that. This Pokemon has really good stats overall, and the fact that it has access to potential Shadow Ball, Torch Song as well for the boost as well, Earth Power, and then potentially Terra Blast Fairy can be very strong as well. Moving on to some move sets, we're going to start off with that specific set, the Spec set, which is going to be, again, having the Unaware ability with Torch Song, Shadow Ball, Earth Power, and Terra Blast Fairy. Having the Terra Blast Fairy turn yourself into a Fairy type can be really good to take the dark hits coming your way. It also gives you an immunity to Dragon types, which could be very solid as well. But overall, I think this move will either be the Shadow Ball, or sorry, it'll either be the Terra Blast Fairy or the Terra Blast Ghost to be changing over for the Shadow Ball. I think those are going to be your options mainly. This is a really good Pokemon. Max HP to boost your defensive stats as much as possible, and then max in its special attack with a modest nature to blow things back, again, as much as possible. Other than that, we have a defensive set here, physically defensive with the heavy duty boots this time. We're running the, again, Terra Blast Fairy, or Terra type Fairy rather, with Torch Song, Hex, Will-O-Wisp, and Slack Off. These 4 moves are going to be the bread and butter of this Pokemon. It's going to be able to burn everything in a very physically offensive metagame. Torch Song to boost the special attacks, so you can beat past basically anything you need to. Will-O-Wisp for the burns, Hex for extra damage, Slack Off for recovery. Very straightforward here. And then finally, the last set, I'm going to show the Citrus Berry set on the Skeledirge with Unaware. This one here is also max defense, max HP, but it is more of a doubles variant. So something like the Heat Wave will be a lot better than the Torch Song to be spread damage. Slack off for recovery, Snarl for the, again, spread damage, but also because it'll reduce the special attack stat of the opposing Pokemon, and then protect or helping hand depending on what you want to do. Probably protect since you're going to be a bit slower, but I think these 4 moves for doubles are going to be very common as well. Moving on to some predictions, I think this will be a UU Pokemon. It'll be the worst of all 3 of the starter Pokemon, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad Pokemon. I think it's actually a very good Pokemon. This honestly is just one of the best trios of starter Pokemon we've had in years, since arguably Gen 4 at the time. And I think honestly now, I'd probably rather have these 3 Pokemon rather than either of, or well, any of the starter Pokemon from Gen 4. So let me know about that down in the comments below if you agree with me or not. Unaware in UU tier is going to be very good for setup because a lot of that tier is dominated by setting up, which is good. It can be very good offensively and defensively, especially because of the Hex and Torch Song boost. Overall, I think this Pokemon is going to have some usefulness in the OU tier, but will mostly be a UU Pokemon. In VGC, I think Unaware has some utility, not as much as in the singles metagame. Helping Hand is really nice and useful, but the big advantage that this Pokemon has are its support moves like Snarl and its spread moves like Heat Wave as well. They're all going to have really good options to hit things for good damage and have the secondary effects, whether it's the burn on Heat Wave or the special attack drop on Snarl. Moving on to Draft League, this is my specialty, so you guys really like that type of content, make sure to subscribe, of course. We're looking at a 17 to 18 point scale, which means that the most expensive Pokemon will be 17 or 18 points. I think this Pokemon will fall in the 12 to 13 point range. Reason being is it's really bulky, it has a lot of great defensive synergy with a lot of different things, it has good defensive typing, and you can counter team really well. The issue that I have with it is that there are so many better options for fire types and ghost types in the format, and there's going to be other Pokemon that people want to try out. They're going to be able to really bump this thing down a little bit in usage, so I think it's not going to be able to get any higher than the 12 to 13 points here, especially because the speed tier on this is only base 66. You really want to have a bit of a faster build when you're looking at Draft League. That's just a bit more, a bit easier to build with, rather than in doubles where Trick Room is such an easy way to build around. You don't have to have that kind of speed stat going on. It has a lot of good partners, like I mentioned before, so just be ready for Skeledirge to dominate some Draft League scenes. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today on Skeledirge, the Fire Ghost starter Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This thing's going to be an absolute menace, and I cannot wait to give it a try in competitive Pokemon. If you guys like this type of video, then make sure to leave a like on the video because we're aiming for 75 likes on today's content, as well as commenting which Pokemon you want to see me cover next. If you guys are interested in more competitive Pokemon content, more daily competitive Pokemon content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel too. We're on the way to 2,000 subscribers and we cannot get there without you. So guys, I want to give a big thank you to you for watching, but also to our YouTube channel members for supporting the channel and going the extra mile. Their tier 1s are Liv, Eric, Zeke, and Texas Man. Our tier 2 is Tone, and our tier 3 is Sully. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for your support, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.